All right, welcome to episode 10 of Chasing Rings. Quite a milestone, quite a milestone. How you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing great.
All right. On today's episode, we will wrap up our discussion of the coaching hiring cycle as the carousel has finally stopped spinning. Even though the Raiders hire is not official until after the Super Bowl, all 10 teams now have a coach. And then we'll launch into the beginning of our coverage of Super Bowl 60 as Super Bowl week is officially underway, effective yesterday. Before we jump into our topics for today, though, word just came down earlier today that New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft was not elected into the NFL Hall of Fame as well. When you look at the modern NFL, quite honestly, it's hard to tell the story of the league without Robert Kraft at this point. He has 6 Super Bowl titles, 2 decades of influence, and an ownership era that fundamentally helped shape what modern day football even looks like in terms of its competitive standards. So his resume speaks for itself. So just like the discussion we had about Belichick, whether you like Kraft or not, it seems like he was certainly Hall of Fame worthy. Big dude, what are your quick thoughts on this before we dive into our topics for today?
Very similar to what we said about Belichick. His resume is pretty much at least 80% of it is Belichick's resume. Putting people together, being able to attract high impact and high performing players from other teams, running a quality organizations, bringing in the Super Bowl rings, changing the way football is played, and being able to rely on a charismatic leader. And many, like Tom Brady and like Belichick, many people in this game these days don't give folks a chance to put that type of legacy together. I think we're talking about, again, a legacy that cannot be matched by other owners. So he should be in.
All right. And what about you, G?
Yeah, definitely agree he should be in, but likely this is a result of the two gates, Spygate, Deflategate. The conspiracy theorist in me would not be surprised if there were some discussions amongst voters about consistency. I mean, how do you put Bob Kraft in there and you leave Belichick out? So that consistency piece, and that's just a conspiracy theory. And it just really reconfirms that the Hall of Fame really needs to change its approach.
Absolutely. And I think, G, you wrapped up our discussion on that pretty well the other day. And here's the first piece of the puzzle, right? What happens to all of the remaining candidates that come up associated with the New England Patriots teams from those time periods? So this will be very interesting as we follow this. Brady will be up soon, and it will be super, super interesting to see what they decide to do with Tom Brady. I think if he's not elected, there's going to be some serious drama with regards to the validity of the NFL Hall of Fame at that point.
Yep.
All right. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes of today. So now that all of the teams have found their head coaches, and again, the Raiders hiring of Clint Kubiak won't be official until after the Super Bowl. Kind of want to get into, where do you think these teams have landed in terms of the hiring decisions that they made? Certainly now that the hires have been made, things can really shift to the Super Bowl. But for the time being, let's take a closer look at, what these hires look like. Which new coach do you really think is positioned to win right away? Big dude, I'll start with you.
And looking over it, the number one coach that I think is in a great position is Jesse Mentor. Jesse Mentor, as we know, inherits Lamar Jackson, and he inherits him. He has a good, strong squad. And I think Jesse Mentor, because of his outstanding background as well with defense, think has a chance to restore Baltimore back, not necessarily to the glory days, but somewhere in between, because they've been pretty much a pedestrian in the last few years. They have a good defense, but nothing that is necessarily dominating. So I think when we look at Lamar Jackson, and also, he has Lamar Jackson that is an independent quarterback. He's one of those quarterbacks that makes great plays and drives you nuts. How will he be able to deal with him as far as the maturity that he'll need as a leader, and what the next couple of years will be, and how do you get the team behind somebody like Lamar Jackson? So he has a good squad. He can restore the D, and I think that he's pretty excited for the leadership and opportunity, especially in this market. I think he is also a player's coach, and also a coach that will be able to bring other people with him once he gets started.
Sorry about that. It'd be nice if I unmute my mic. G, which new coach do you think is positioned to win right away?
I suspect that Joe Brady his team will probably, I think they'll probably win the most games because they're really, really set up well, I think. Hopefully you can keep Schwartz, but we'll see about that. But yeah, I think Buffalo with Joe Brady, it probably has the most solid situation of the 10.
Cool. All right. Which new coach do you think is already on the clock, G? Out of all those coaches that were hired, who can already hear the footsteps behind them entering the season?
This one was tough for me because there are several teams I think where the fan bases, or it's because of the leadership, can pull the trigger very, very quickly on a coach. But I would go to my favorite punching bag, which is Kevin Stefanski. I just think that is such a horrible, horrible fit for Atlanta. And if you think about who he's bringing with him, he brought Reese with him. It's like, so I mean, you're pretty much telling me that that whatever I was not doing in Cleveland, I'm going to not do in Atlanta. And even though they're bringing in some good position coaches, the reality is those two are going to really set the tone for the culture of the Falcons. And then, with the Falcons, with his own issues with salary cap and who's the QB, I just think that Kevin Stefanski, he should rent an apartment. Don't rent a house or buy a home. Rent an apartment.
What do you think, big dude? Who do you think is going to be under some pressure and be on the clock early on?
Well, I'm going to take John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, clearly, I say in many coaching carousels, not just this one, he's the biggest hire for the Giants in years. And the expectations are big. And so far, the Giants are setting him up, they believe, I'm sure, for success. I know they've set some folks up before, but things are obviously, regardless of what the Giants have done, have not been up to standard. They've spent money on quarterbacks. They've brought in all kind of other folks that were draft picks. And they brought in Daboll, who thought for sure was going to turn things around. And that didn't happen. I think in this particular situation, the culture of winning has a chance to emerge. I mean, there's a lot of people are saying that Harbaugh has a chance at changing the culture. The only culture that the Giants want at this particular point is winning. And I think what they would like to do, the Giants themselves, all those 18 years that Harbaugh had, all those accomplishments, all those things that he did, they want to cash in all those 18 years, I think, in this first year and want something significant. either knocking on the door for the playoffs or the playoffs. Of course, they have their quarterback and they have their Scatterboo. I think that still is not going to be enough. The question is going to be is how is he going to be able to coach Dart, and how is he going to be able to coach the defense and make the changes that he's made in this market. The Giants have a long history of winning. They've had nothing but a long history of losing. And I think the Giants took Harbaugh with not a guarantee, but a high expectation that he will turn things around quickly. You could go through all those other coaches, but I don't think the Giants are going to accept any excuses at this particular point. And if he wins, well, that's good. That's what you were supposed to do. And more of the same is what we want.
Got you. And while you have the floor, big dude, which hire do you feel was the safest hire?
Oh, now that was the hardest thing to look at. I mean, I think the safest hire so far, because I'm not sure if they know what direction they're going to go, is I had actually Mike LaFleur. He's gotten started. I think the Cardinals have a developmental thing going on with their team. They're going to have to make some changes. You're going to look at the defense. I mean, do you continue to have somebody like Buda Baker and those other folks that are there? I think it's safe, but I think that it's a good situation where he can make the team his, and it's going to take a second. And the Cardinals, I don't think, want to go back to the well again to look for anyone else. So it seems like a good place that will work with you. And I think that the safest place right now would be them. They have a lot of talent, but they got to really figure out what they're going to do with all their other players that are there. On offense, on defense, the Marvin Harrison thing. He didn't start off the greatest. So how is he going to be able to affect people and coach folks? I think that the Arizona Cardinals, from what I saw, even when they were the St. Louis Cardinals, and they have the same family that they had in St. Louis, they're known for giving coaches a little bit more time. In fact, I'm surprised they gave Gannon as much time as they gave him. So I would say, because of the way things have happened historically with the Cardinals itself from St. Louis and in Arizona, I would say it's Mike LaFleur.
Okay. And what about you, G? Which hire do you think felt the safest?
I kind of have a tie, and it's really about culture in the midst of a pretty I say tumultuous time for those two organizations. That would be Pittsburgh and Buffalo. I thought that it was really, really good for them to bring in, or to have people leading the team that has a lot of experience. So I think Mike McCarthy was safe, just based on his background, being from Pittsburgh, and there'll be a lot of respect because of his background. And I believe Joe Brady, I kind of have a tie with them because Buffalo Bills perspective, I think it was good to have that internal person to try to keep some continuity of culture. Because I really believe the culture in and of itself at the Bills was fine. There's a good chance that the offense, they really, really, really like Brady. I'm sure that had a lot to do with him being there. So I would say it was a tie for me with those two.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'm in really high agreement with you, G, on these. I definitely think Joe Brady is positioned to win right away. Things shouldn't change drastically in Buffalo. For them, the big thing is tightening up their personnel, especially on defense. But I think he's definitely in a great position to win just as many games as they've been winning the last few years, and to be able to take that next step that they've yet to take yet. In terms of the coach who's already on the clock, I think I'm with you again on that, G. I'm gonna say Stefanski. I feel that he seems to have this reputation of being this offensive genius around the league, but he hasn't really taken his teams anywhere. So I feel like he's probably going to be under some pressure to win right away, given how he's perceived around the league. In terms of the safest, I agree with both of you on this. So I have the three-way tie for what I feel were the safest hires. Definitely Buffalo and Pittsburgh. You got to figure those two coaches, Brady and McCarthy, aren't going to do too much to diminish the type of winning and the culture that is taking place within those organizations. But I also agree with you, big dude, on Mike LaFleur. I feel like that Arizona job, it's been a while since Arizona has been a factor in the league. And I feel that whatever coach they brought in was probably going to be given a little bit of time to do what they need to do. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with that, big dude, when you said that other than this last coach, they tend to give their coaches some time. So I think LaFleur is in a pretty good place there. So definitely some high agreement there in terms of how we all analyze that situation. If we look at, the screen itself captures, for those of you listening, audio services, we have an image of the head coaches that have been hired, and it's predominantly white images that we see. And within that group of coaches, the thing that stands out to all three of us is that there's only one minority candidate hired during this coaching cycle. So as a result of that, heading into next season, we're only going to have 5 minority head coaches in the league. There'll be 3 black head coaches. We have Todd Bowles with Tampa, D'Amico Ryans with Houston, and Aaron Glenn with the Jets. And then you add in Robert Saleh, who is of Muslim Lebanese descent, and Dave Canales of the Carolina Panthers, your Carolina Panthers, who's of Hispanic descent. So these outcomes have sparked some significant criticism, as this marks the 5th time since the Rooney Rule was implemented in 2003 that an offseason coaching cycle has produced no black coaches, specifically, no black head coaches. That reality is especially troubling when you think about that roughly 70% of the players in the league are black. So they can be the machine that moves the game along, but they can't be in charge of running an organization. That's very suspect. Right now, the Rooney Rule currently requires teams with head coaching, coordinator, GM openings. They have to interview at least 2 minority candidates before making a hire, and at least 1 minority candidate for a quarterback's coaching position, which I found interesting. Yet the deeper concern remains here. Why are so many minority assistant coaches, many with strong resumes and proven track records, being overlooked for these head coaching opportunities? During the annual Super Bowl week news conference that Commissioner Goodell has, he referenced this and acknowledged that the league needs to do a better job with this and that they'll really evaluate the Rooney Rule moving forward. But he made an interesting comment during that. He stated that all teams were in compliance, and his belief, in quotes, that every team, in quotes, exceeded its requirements. So he believed that every team exceeded its requirements. Gentlemen, if the Rooney Rule isn't delivering results, what needs to change to make minority candidates real contenders for these head coaching jobs? And I'm going to start with you, G.
Oh man. Okay, so let me put on my compliance hat real quick. So the Rooney Rule is just basically saying that you have to spread your net wide, and you can't just focus on you know majority candidates. So it's really forcing the teams to take a deep dive into the pool, and in that sense, it works. And that's probably what what Goodell is saying is that they are following the Rooney Rule. They're spreading that wide net. There are no legal violations with that. As a matter of fact, you come in compliance when you spread a wide net. And then the next question is really more about the hiring piece. So the Rooney Rule isn't about hiring, and because it would be pretty much illegal if you say you have to go hire. You have to not only spread your net wide, but now you also have to have a quota and start hiring people based on, their race. So in that sense, he's right. They're in compliance legally. They're in compliance with the rule. Now, the issue becomes with, and you touched on it, with the large number of players, being black, and we get more who are Latino, and of course you have a lot more also that are from the Pacific Islands. So there's a broad base at the player level of of a really diverse league if you think about it. They definitely have a lot of white players. Then the question becomes who goes into coaching, and then that pipeline it pretty much shrinks. It really narrows, and it is predominant. I don't know the percentage. Maybe one of you all can look that up while I'm talking. The percentage of all coaches, all front office, what percentage of those are minorities? I suspect it's a small percentage. So then why is that? The only way, if you go back and look at this from a world of work perspective, me personally, and this was with no research done, but understanding research and workplace research in other areas, there's a lot of bias there. Some of it may be intentional, and that if you are in a particular coaching tree, I'm going to trust you more than somebody who is not in that particular coaching tree. I think a good example of that, I think the McVay coaching tree is represented pretty well. Y'all can correct me on that, but if I remember correctly, there's a coaching tree. So then there's a level of old boy network involved with that. Then speaking of old boy networking, there's just that broadly speaking. If you think about a lot of people who are being hired and have been hired, there's a reason why a lot of them, are white head coaches who are the owners. And I would even go far as to say that even where you have majority or minority owners who are not white, a lot of them are following that system because they're in the club, and so they're maintaining that particular system. And so I believe that there's some intentional, there may be some that's not intentional. Some of the owners or GMs, they're just kind of going about their lives the way they go, not thinking too much about it. And again, I'm going to just stick with who's in this hiring tree, or I'm going to go with the trend, like this trend, young hires, a lot of offensive coordinators. It's just a trend, a bias with the trend itself. But nevertheless, there's definitely several forms of biases that are probably at play that are hurting a lot of minority coaches in general. And since you were talking about black coaches, because there are a good number of black coordinators and position coaches out there that actually have shown really high talent. I actually did a comparison on an AI bot and kind of saw that played out in the numbers. So there's different forms of bias against that hurts a lot of these minority coaches in general, black coaches specifically, I think.
Before you hop in, big dude, was able to identify some of those numbers, G, and I'll throw some of the bigger ones out there. So for GMs in late 2023, 25% of the GMs were black. So that's 8 out of 32 teams. For the 2026 season, executive leadership, we had 3 black head coaches. Well, that's what we're preparing for now, which we mentioned, and then the 2 other coaches of color. In 2023, people of color held 22% of team executive positions, which was an increase from 13% right during that COVID period in 2020. Overall, roughly 30% of the GMs are people of color. And I like how you mentioned the coaching pipeline, G. The 53 0.5% of the players in 2023 were black. Now it's up to more close to 70%. Only 19% to 22% of the head coaches have been black in recent seasons. So these numbers aren't really high when you think about the number of teams that are out there. Again, going back to that 8 out of 32 GMs, that's not really a good track record. But I guess the puzzling point is you seem to have representation in these other levels of the organization. Why are we continuously skirting around hiring when it comes to the head coach? I think that's probably the most puzzling thing about this. And the thing with the coaches as well is the amount of time that they seem to be given. Like Aaron Glenn had 1 year with the Jets, and already they wanted people were talking about him being fired. Well, he was there a year. He didn't even get a chance to really establish anything. So I was happy that he at least is returning for next season. But I'll leave that there. Big Dude, want you to jump in and give your thoughts on it.
Excuse me. Well, it seems like what needs to happen. Let's get right to that. And you and G Guru, you guys laid this out. So I don't know how far to go with a number of other things or statistics and data, but what it doesn't appear to be as I look at these particular searches that we saw, and it looks like several individuals of color were hired in these, and several individual colors that of color. Not the way they just hired, but they were in there. It looked like they were going to be considered. I know on some of our past shows, we even brought up some folks like Brian Flores. For sure, I look at somebody like Brian Flores that has been a head coach. I look at I think we mentioned the Denver defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph. There are people like that are just either been coaches or are just ready to go do something else, it seems. And it is their choice if they don't want to do it. But it just seems like with this, the Rooney Rule, and you mentioned 2003, so that's 23 years where we haven't had significant progress. But the structure of the Rooney Rule, I'm not so sure that it's really been looked at to address those things. And as Roger Goodell mentions in his very smooth way, where he says, I believe there's more being done. I believe we have reached it. And I know that everybody's compliant, and he all but said, I'm not so sure that it's better. So he gave the right political $46 million answer. And I say $46 million because that's about what he's making a year. Okay. So he gave the right answer. However, with interviewing at least 2 people for all these jobs that are of color, there's really no genuine opportunity for these folks to get a job, because those individuals that we just mentioned that were in those positions, and there's probably been some more, they go to not the institution, they go to the ball club and interview, and they may even had a good interview, but they get there and they kind of understand kind of some of the things G was saying. What these different things are going to be hard on individuals of color. They can see the writing on the wall and can see the nature of the beast, and that there is no genuine opportunity, that you got a sham interview. That's the question. When we look at these interviews, how we have to be critical of the type of interviews that are there because you are just a minority. And many people that don't understand that say there's a problem and that's discrimination the way. We have to have the best candidates. And I know that John Saunders, you all may remember him from ESPN, God rest his soul, and I'm mentioning that because it's important, because he said many people who argue about getting the best candidate miss the whole point from individuals that are interested in this situation. That's all anybody has ever wanted. That's all anybody has ever wanted was the best candidate. So if we go on and we stick with 2 people being interviewed and people are withdrawing from the search, remember, there are a number of people that were in these searches they withdrew, and it was great because you go ahead and you withdraw, just like some of these other folks that, like I think Flores withdrew, and he got a 3-year contract with the Vikings, and Joseph stayed and said, "I'm good." So the question is, are you pulling out of the interviews because you have to play for second place and you know you're playing for second place? That's the terrible part about all these things with the Rooney Rule is not addressing. They have these minority coaching institutes. They have minority things for the NCAA, different subject. But there are different types of things that show that we touch the surface of things or are tangential, but nothing that's deep and penetrating. So if folks think that they're not going to win, they say, let me go back and sign that 3-year extension so I can go back and let me have a nice life because I can't go through this again and know that I'm going to be in second place. So a genuine opportunity has to exist. Why play for second place, and what types of things in between a mandatory interview of two folks of color? What in between there can we, and like G said, it's against the law. Something has to happen. I mean, if you're going to do any types of training, why are people coming up short? And most importantly, and I'll say this, Guru, I hope I'm not out of line in saying it because it is my team. Why do you hire a person with no play calling experience and hasn't started from 2024 to 2026, has not done any of that? Nobody else is of color, is qualified. We got people who are in college. I keep mentioning Byron Leftwich. I know you all laugh at me. He's right over there, and he got a Super Bowl under his belt and other things, and got 3 other types of championships that are under there. And it doesn't matter whether Brady was a quarterback. He was the offensive coordinator. He called plays. He was involved with the whole process of things. So the Rooney Rule is almost out of date, more so than what was it called in the 30s? The New Deal, that President Roosevelt said, here's the New Deal. This is how people aren't going to be poor anymore. No, it's very out of date. And something needs to be done to start to talk about how to cultivate genuine opportunity. Speaking of culture, there's another level of accountability that the NFL is not pressing and asking for. And then after you press and ask for it, if you don't get it, then you demand it. You just can't guess as to whether you've made progress. You've got to know that you have. And the evidence is people withdraw because they know they can't win.
I think G touched on it very well earlier when he broke down the compliance piece of it. It's essentially a compliance tool. And the reason I circle back to that, I will use Buffalo as a prime example. Buffalo interviewed 2 black candidates, Anthony Lynn, who was the Chargers head coach, wasn't really given a bunch of time there. Maybe he got 2 years if my memory serves me well. And he was the Bills' interim coach a while back. So he's been a head coach twice, essentially. And the other candidate was Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins defensive coordinator. Now, does anybody really think that either of those gentlemen had a legitimate shot at getting that Buffalo job?
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the problem with having these rules. Okay, the way the rules set up, all I basically have to do is interview people. So it seems like to me in that case, they picked 2 people, satisfied the requirement to be compliant, and then went about their business. And I'm sure they're not the only team that did that. So that was a very important distinction for UG to tease out that compliance element of it. Because once you do that, once you meet that criteria, you're not really bound by anything else the way this is set up. You do what you want to do.
Right.
So,
as I think about this, I want the people who are watching this or listening to this, and I can speak for my mates here because we've known each other for God, it's decades, almost 2 decades now. We're not saying to violate any law. We're not saying that white coaches are inherently bad. We're not saying that some of the coaches who are white should not have received head coaching jobs. That is absolutely not what we're saying. What we're asking the question is how is it that you can have, for example, somebody like Eric Bieniemy who has proven experience. He hasn't always done the best, but he also hasn't done the worst. But he's not getting a job. And now some people may say in his case he's blackballed by the league. But I'm like, well, okay, if that's the case, then just push. Then why is he there? If you're going to let him operate in the league, then you need to treat him fairly across the board. Period. And that's really what we're trying to get at is how do we bring in a true course of fairness in hiring? And we understand that depending on the role and the situation, there may not be a minority coach in general or black coach in general that would fit the bill. I think about your boys, Guru. They needed some that stability, so they brought somebody from within. To me, that actually made sense. No issue with that, right? I think about, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Giro Avero, the defensive coordinator for the Panthers. How's he overlooked? So right, so our issue, and I'm going to say my issue. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop speaking for my mates here, and they can chime in. Is just be fair in what you're going to do. And I understand, just like college, college athletics, the head football coach is the face of the team. The head football coach is hobnobbing with all types of people. And so the owners, they're going to hire people that they feel are comfortable, that they can relate to. This happens in the world of work for good or for bad. The presumptions can come down to, and I say presumption, can come down to, I believe this person because how they walk through life is going to be able to be that face no matter where they move and represent the organization. And that's just one of those, sometimes that's conscious bias, sometimes that's unconscious. But nevertheless, I don't care who the owner is, they should be evaluating themselves, if they call themselves fair minded people, on whether or not that's within the process. So for me, I'm like, they need to do that evaluation. Understand that you do not, yes, you're the face, but we're in a multicultural society, a multi ethnic society. And so anybody who is professional, they should be able to represent that face. And you're not with no issues coming with them from the back end. Also, although in college football and some of the SEC worlds, they don't care about that. Lane Kiffin. Um, okay, that's a jab at you, Guru. But I'm not. I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm gonna just stop this and just say the head coach is the face. We know there's some conscious and unconscious biases that are in there. Well, we know that if they being the owners and GMs go back and they look at people who were interviewing, they know some people got screwed. They're humans who can think, so they know it. Question is whether or not they care about it or not. And then my final thing is none of this will change unless the team's pocketbooks are hit. That's the only way it's going to be changed. Or if the writers, they're coming out and they are just creating fires around this. And again, we're not saying hire based on race. That's not what we're saying. We're saying hiring based on fair mindedness. That's what we're saying. So I'm sorry, I got me on a soapbox on this one. My bad.
Well stated, G. Well stated, that also trickles down into the assistant coach hiring that happens because it's just the same system. I'm hiring my friends. I'm hiring those who look like me, and that cycle just continues at that level as well. So very eloquently broken down, G. I think Big Dude and I are both in agreement with the everything you just broke down for us. So appreciate that. But we'll see where this goes, and be sure to track whether any changes are made to the Rooney Rule as we head into next season. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with it. I mean, obviously it hasn't worked, so we'll see if they are dedicated and committed to making any changes. Now, let's move on to Super Bowl 60. So both the teams are in place. Monday, there was media night, the first formal activity that takes place at the Super Bowl. And unless I missed it, I don't think there was really anything eventful. No Marshawn Lynch type statements this year. I think it was pretty vanilla on Monday night. But New England will be making their 12th Super Bowl appearance. And Seattle will be making their 4th. And this is going to be a rematch of Super Bowl 49, which we all remember from the Malcolm Butler game-saving interception at the goal line. Pete Carroll's questionable non-call, but we won't go there. But both teams are in place. Festivities are underway, and we have about 5 days remaining now until kickoff. Then we're going to keep peeling back the layers to this game as we get closer to the end of the week and closer, to game time. But as we look at the beginning of this week, the teams coming in, the three of us have been following the season very closely. What do you think are the major storylines that we really need to be thinking about before we dive into picking apart this matchup? What are the major storylines that we should be tracking as this game takes shape? Big dude, set it off for us.
Well, I'll try. One of the things we talked about earlier, as well as I know Sam Darnold has done. He's I think the big storyline. Him being with several teams, he's the person that I think is the face of why he changed teams until things get better, work through disappointments, and come out and give some genuine leadership. Is he able to do that on this big stage? It looks like so far he has the team around him where he won't have to do it by himself. My biggest thing will be is this little quiet injury that he has and hasn't so far reared his ugly head. The question will be in his game, where they're hitting 10 times harder and people are 10 times faster, will he suffer anything or suffer any type of physical stress concerning his injury to continue on in the game, to do well in it, number one, and then number two, to finish it, because I think the Patriots are going to bring something. It's going to be, of course, close, hard-hitting game, but the storyline I'm interested in is the finish for Sam Darnold as a quarterback of Seattle. After all he has been through, he hasn't complained to the papers. He's gone and always kind of started the machine up again. So now he has to start up a machine again. Seems to have a coach that a lot of people don't know. So obviously whatever's happening, McDonald is behind him and giving him the level of confidence and kind of giving him the wheel as far as what needs to happen with offense, and especially we have one person there that's departing. So he has a lot of stuff going on, and as tough-minded as he is, when your coordinator is going also, you also wonder what type of effect that will have on Sam Darnold. So I'm going to say it's Sam Darnold with all the things, through all the changes that he's made, all the success. Can he do it yet one more time facing the things that he's going to face? So I'm going to say it's Sam Darnold on one side. I think the other side will be the young quarterback. Again, we'll go quarterbacks. We'll talk about Drake May, 23 years old. He's got a chance to play well. I think he's the reason the Patriots have gotten further. He's the reason why the games have been closed out. He is the reason why, his football skills and IQ got the Patriots the big win in the snow, because he was able to do all the simple things. So what I like about him, all the simple things with a little bit of dash of Tabasco. He knows how to, when he ended the game, with that naked bootleg against the Rams. That was it. It was a naked bootleg, game over. And I think that, there's guy, again, getting a coach that is there for him. Not a whole lot of change, but is he going to be able to take on just a tough and rugged Seattle defense? It's going to be who's tougher. This is going to, I think, take us back to the early '60s and late '60s and early '70s with Joe Namath and Johnny U and all those folks and Greasy. Who's going to be able to take the last hit? Who's going to be able to finish the game? So I think, through all the players that they all have, I think those are the storylines. And that's how it kind of was. It used to be one quarterback versus the other. That's the way I see it. It's one quarterback versus the other, just kind of like baseball pitchers. That's what I say.
All right. Thanks, big dude. What about you, G? What do you see as the big stories going into this?
For me, the biggest storyline is that it's better to be lucky than good. And I believe that New England was pretty much lucky because if Bo Nix is in, Denver wins. But nevertheless, they're there. I think back when they played the Chargers, the Chargers' offensive line was pretty hit. But the defense did good. With the Texans, the defense was just able to dominate in the snow. So I think a lot of chips fell that played to New England. But this is a different game. This is Seattle. And so for me, I believe the biggest, highest level storyline is that I think the lucky New England run is over.
Interesting. Very interesting. For me, one is the QBs. You have the up and coming young gun versus the redemption story. And I think that this will be huge moving forward for both of those quarterbacks' legacies. Second for me is the interior line. You have the Seattle defensive line going up against really New England's Achilles heel, their offensive line. So that'll be interesting. And then on the flip side of it, New England's defensive line has really stepped up during the playoffs, and it'll be interesting if they'll be able to impact Sam Darnold in any way. The final one for me, looking at this, is the coaching and the experience that each of these two coaches have. Mike McDonald is only his second year as a head coach, basically entering unknown territory. How will he get his team prepared for this big stage? And you have Mike Vrabel, who has seen this from different perspectives. He has not led a team to a Super Bowl as a coach, but he's had plenty of playoff wars during his time in Tennessee. Certainly as a player in New England, he's been on those Super Bowl teams. So I'm wondering how much of an advantage will that give him as he prepares his team for everything that comes with this week, because this is probably the longest week that these teams will experience all year. Even though it's the same as a game week, with everything that goes on around them, it seems like it's just exaggerated. And I think it's really going to be important for the coaches to be able to control how their team processes the hoopla around this game and really trying to get them to treat this as it's just another game. So for me, those are the three big things I'm really looking at. And of course, as the week continues, we are really going to peel back the layers of this. We'll give our analysis of all the different components of this game and, who's favored in certain areas. Right now, I think Seattle's a 4.5-point favorite in the game, but we'll break down QB versus QB, the lines going against each other. We'll look at the wide receiver situations. So make sure you stay with us throughout the week as we really delve more into the Super Bowl and get ready for Super Bowl 60. Anything else you guys want to add? Big dude, I'll start with you.
I think the other intangible that I think that we have to look at the game is, and this also reminds me, seeing the wide receiver for the Patriots is going to be interesting. We talking about the run may be over, but I think the person that would be least likely to keep it going, he was a person that had a key catch in the last game, is Mac Hollins, who has also been involved with a Super Bowl with the Eagles. So sometimes it's the older player. On that flea flicker pass, everybody looked at that like that was a regular pass that somebody should handle. But there's a guy that, ran a pattern and made a catch to set up that last field goal. I think the more experienced players that have the basics are going to be the ones that lead the game. So I would look for plays like, from Mac Hollins and anybody else that Seattle may have had during the year that no one else has mentioned. Just like, the Redskins had, what was their running back's name that got 204 yards? Tim, I can't remember his name. Yeah, boy. Anyway, the Redskins had a running back that no one ever heard of again. They had 204 yards rushing. I think you're going to see some plays and players like that come through, players that you may never hear from again or never did hear from until that particular day.
Anything to send us home, G?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. From a feel-good perspective, you mentioned Darnold. I mean, he's really having a redemption tour season. That's a real feel-good story in my view. I love stuff like that. I think the possibility of being the youngest QB Super Bowl champ, I think that's a really good story, and that feels really, really good. And then Vrabel, Vrabel has an opportunity to do something that would definitely secure his Hall of Fame credentials if he wins this. And I'm like, yeah, he won as a player, yeah, he win as a coach, but this is really a Hall of Fame moment for him, in my view. So those are some feel good things that I think are important. Just kind of stepping back, thinking about that. But also pressure comes to my mind. I think Stefan Diggs. I'm sorry, he's been through the playoffs, quite a bit. So I'm sure he has a lot weighing on him. Hopefully he doesn't try to overplay and then find himself, missing routes and things of that nature or running before he catches the ball. So I'm hoping he can keep and play within himself. I do believe that if things are falling the Patriots' way, I definitely believe he can get the ball. Um, Also, with Gonzalez at DB, Jackson, JSN, he's going to have to really, really play well. That's going to be an interesting battle. And then finally, and hopefully that Drake May and Vrabel, they cannot let the talk about Brady Belichick come into their heads. They really have to put that stuff at bay and that whole dynasty comparison stuff because you all know we are too many games or too many championships short of even calling this another dynasty run. So they have to really put that psychological part aside. And I think what you said, Guru, about the coaching is going to be really, really important, and probably more so in New England than in Seattle, I think. Then lastly, I will say I believe that 30 points is going to be the storyline. Whoever scores 30 is likely going to win. And I say that because Seattle has been scoring over 30 points in the postseason. New England hasn't reached that yet. So I believe that whoever gets 30 points will likely win this game. And second, next man up. I'm looking at the injury reports, and and both teams had some serious injuries. A lot of did not participate in practice. A few who are out. And I'm just like, so I'm saying that next man up, particularly in offensive line, um, uh, and I think the second level with the linebackers, that's going to be really, really important, I think. So that's pretty much how I would pretty much close that out. Seattle will have to punish New England for blitzing because New England ramped up their blitzes in the postseason. And Seattle has to run well, and they have to stop May from running. I believe the fact that he can actually make a difference running, and that may have surprised some people. It's one thing to read about it, it's another thing to play against it. But they have to stop. If they can stop him from running and make him throw, New England, they have to continue to ramp it up. They have to make Darnold uncomfortable. If they do not make him uncomfortable, he's going to pick them apart. And but they need to, and the coaching definitely has to find those right plays that allow May to use his name, because that's going to use his legs. I'm sorry, because that's going to keep Seattle honest. And so I think that the 30 points, though, the next man up, if they play the way they should play, the coaches, if they script their games to their strengths and capitalize on the other team's weakness, that'll be a winning game. But just mark my words, 30 points.
All right, we will mark your words. So as you can all see, there are so many storylines. I think, as this week unfolds, this is going to be an intriguing Super Bowl. So it'll be very interesting to see what the outcome is. But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Chasing Rings, and we will see you next time. See you later.